Sometimes the most interesting theories don't come from analyzing every tiny pixel of a game, but from a simpler observation. I think everyone who has played Deltarune has focused on answering the big lore questions. What is the roaring? Who are the titans? Who is the knight? In fact, I've got a video for each of those topics right here on the channel. But what if we look a little to the side, or rather, a little into the past? Deltarune's essential premise has always been that your choices don't matter. From the very beginning, it implies that, unlike Undertale, this game follows a strict linear path. However, ever since Chapter 2, with the weird route, Snowgrave, and events that drastically alter our save file, we realized that maybe those words meant something else entirely. I won't lie, I had no idea what that something else could be until I was reading the comments on a video and found this interaction. What if we save the worlds by saving the game? Maybe by returning to the original save file Kris had in Chapter 1, that is what happens at the end of Chapter 6. Hence, don't forget, the way we save it is by creating a new save at the decisive moment. At least, that's what I made up based on your theory. Thinking about it, it makes a lot of sense. Maybe not literally how Cade Needs the Earth 7104 proposed it, but it gave me an interesting starting point, so thanks. And thanks to Mason Alex F9P for asking the question that unlocked 100% of Caden's brainpower. So, what if to save the world from the roaring, Kris restores the game? And pay attention here, I don't mean our save file, but Kris's save file. Many of you might have forgotten, but the very first time we save in Deltarune, Kris already had his own file and we overwrote it. It might seem like a small detail, but with this guy, nothing is a coincidence. And that is how we begin the theory we'll call the save file theory. First, we need to talk about Kris and how they would go about freeing themselves from the weight of our control. Chapter 1, the weight of the soul. The prophecy, the roaring, the angel's heaven, all of these things are condemned to happen. We know that for Kris, unlike for the player, things aren't a game. We were the ones who hijacked their life and friends, and we are close in one way or another to ending their world, depriving them even of their own will, or are we? There is a contradiction that we've all accepted from the start. Kris has a will of their own. We've seen it. We saw it at the end of Chapter 1, when they ripped out the soul with their bare hands to break free from our control. We saw it in the weird route, when they unleashed their fury and frustration against the soul after we manipulated Noelle. However, whenever there is something they don't want us to see, they remove the soul, confirming they have total control over our actions. So the million-dollar question rises, why do they let us continue? If they have the strength to lock our soul in a birdcage, why do they put it back in the next morning? As we saw in the intro, the answer has been hiding in plain sight, disguised as the most basic mechanic of any video game, the save file. In Undertale and Deltarune, determination has a very literal meaning, determination, the ability to undo the end, to return from death, to go back to a save point. Kris doesn't stop us now because he knows how the rules of this universe work better than we do. They know that no matter how many fountains we seal, no matter if we do a pacifist route or freeze all their friends, our actions, however important they seem, are temporary. It goes without saying that for some reason, which we haven't confirmed but theorized in videos like Kris hates the soul is necessary for Kris and the Roaring Knight's plan. I won't get into the night right now, but it helps to understand why our poor protagonist makes these sacrifices and tolerates our possession. In the end, everything is going to reset anyway. But this is more than just a crazy theory. It has the precedent in Toby Fox's archives. Let's talk about Flowey the Flower. Before Frisk fell into the underground, Flowey was the god of his own world. He had enough determination to save, load, and reset at will. But the moment Frisk fell with a greater determination, Flowey lost his privileges. His save file disappeared, overridden by ours. He became powerless against our will. Does that sound familiar? It should, because it is exactly Kris's situation. Now, remember what Flowey did to regain control. He tells us that after his first encounter with Frisk and failing to attack him, he tried to reset and couldn't. But instead of attacking again with full power, he waited. He let us advance. And in the neutral route, he took advantage of the chaos to absorb the 6 human souls, crashing the game. When we opened it again, our save file was gone. In its place was Flowey's. Flowey, LV99999, my world. he had accumulated enough power to surpass our determination and recover his own save file. This is the foundation of the save file theory. Kris is executing the exact same plan, but much more subtly. They allow us to seal dark fountains. They allow us to recruit allies. They allow us to get stronger and collect shadow crystals. Why? Because they're using us as a battery. Kris alone doesn't have the determination to overpower the player controlling their soul. But with every chapter we complete, with every fountain we seal, our connection to this world becomes denser, and with it, our determination. You could say they are farming XP just like Frisk in the genocide route, which may or may not be a coincidence. That way, when we reach the point they're aiming for with the Roaring Night, Kris can overwrite our save file and finally regain access to their original file, back before Des disappeared. This also makes the fact that they're being helped by the Roaring Knight, who is very likely Rudy or Carol Holiday, make even more sense. Whatever the Knight's real identity is, there's no doubt their ultimate goal is to get Des back. Chapter 2. Don't forget. Now, if Kris's plan is so complex, how do they not lose their mind? How do they stay focused on the goal when an alien entity, us, controls their every move, word, and even feeling? The answer lies in the only thing the player cannot control, the only thing we hear at the end of each chapter, just when our influence fades for a moment. The credits song, Don't Forget. Most players interpret this as a sweet tune sung by Laura Shigehara, but with this new context, the lyrics stop being just a pretty song with a melancholic meaning and become a literal instruction. Let's analyze the lyrics. When the light is running low and the shadows start to grow and the places that you know seem like fantasy. Okay, Ralsei himself defines the Dark Worlds as a fantasy. The song is speaking directly to Kris about the effect we have on their world. As we advance, we transform their reality. We turn their school, library, and computer lab into RPG scenarios. For Kris, seeing their classmates turned into warriors and mages might not be as epic as it seems to us, especially considering the real-world consequences, like Birdley potentially not waking up from his slumber. There's a light inside your soul. Normally, we think this light is hope or goodness, but in Deltarune's visual language, what is the light inside Kris's chest? It's the red soul, which literally glows. It is the player. The song literally states there is an entity shining with determination inside them, that's still shining in the cold. This line is brutal. Why in the cold? The cold represents the absence of Kris's own will, of their true soul. It is the feeling of emptiness from being a puppet, or perhaps a direct reference to the darkest possible fate, the Snowgrave route. The song tells them, even if you feel the cold of having no control, even if your body is frozen under orders, that intrusive light is still active, still shining, still watching. It is a warning that the enemy, the player, is still there, with the truth. What is the truth here? The prophecy? The angel's heaven? Death? No. The truth Kris clings to is the reality of their situation, that this is a game, that there is a save file, that nothing the player does is permanent, that truth is their mental shield against our actions, with the promise in our hearts. The plural here isn't a coincidence. Whose hearts? Kris and Ralsei, Kris and Susie. No, this could perfectly refer to the Roaring Knight and Kris, who made a pact to save Des, or perhaps in a more convoluted way, Kris and their past self, because at the end of the day, the Kris we control is just a vessel. Their original self before our arrival would be the real one, though honestly, I think it makes more sense if it refers to the Knight. And the last line is, don't forget, I'm with you in the dark. Don't forget it, don't forget her, don't forget the plan. Now that I, speaking from the dark, has two possible identities. The first, the original Kris, who is still there hiding in the shadows, waiting for the exact moment to emerge and reclaim what is theirs while we pilot the vessel. The second, and much more profound option, is Des. She is the one singing this song, reminding Kris that she is the ultimate goal. Every time the credits roll, it is a reminder that there is one less day until the reset, and it is no accident that this phrase, don't forget, appears scrawled on a drawing in Sans' lab in Undertale. Sans, the only character who knows about resets and timeline manipulation, guards that phrase like a treasure. So, did I overanalyze don't forget? Without a doubt. But surely some of this will make sense much later, perhaps when all the chapters are out and it's all over. Chapter 3. Only one ending? So far, we've mostly discussed internal mechanics and lyrics, but the definitive proof of this theory isn't hidden in the game code or a secret spamton dialogue, but outside the game in the hands of its creator, Toby Fox. When Deltarune launched, the most repeated question was, will there be multiple endings like in Undertale? The official answer was posted on the game's website, closing the synopsis where Toby wrote, "And only one ending?" Closing the sentence like that, cutting it off using ellipsis, and finishing with a question mark made many think it was typical Toby humor, or a hint that he wasn't sure about development yet. But with everything we've seen in the save theory, the perspective shifts. If this theory holds true, it means Toby Fox didn't lie to us, but he tricked us with the truth. Saying there is only one ending usually implies a definitive conclusion, a narrative full stop. But if the goal of the game is to restore the original file, if the climax of Deltarune is a reset to chapter 1, then technically there is no ending. Or rather, the ending is a return to the beginning. That makes the phrasing, "only one ending?" make almost too much sense. I confess, this is what finally motivated me to put this theory together. That question mark exists because Toby knows the outcome of this story isn't a linear conclusion, but a cycle, a narrative Ouroboros, a snake biting its own tail. This completely validates Kris's passivity. They don't stop the player from confronting the Roaring Knight, even though it's clear they have an alliance. Kris knows that if everything goes according to the grand plan, if the only ending is starting over, then Kris wins by default. The true ending isn't defeating the Titans. Their arrival is inevitable. The eternal darkness they unleash will come. The true ending lies beyond that darkness. When everything is black, the music stops, and there is nothing left to do, the save file will be the only way to change that fate. Let's go back to Undertale one more time. In the genocide route, when Chara destroys the world and nothing remains but a black screen, no matter how many times you try to restart the game, the result is the same. But if you wait in the darkness long enough, Char returns and allows us to reset the game, to recreate the world from the moment of their arrival in exchange for our soul. The end of this route in Undertale looks a lot like the Deltarune prophecy. Both end in eternal darkness. And here is where the theory gets terrifying. In Undertale, for the world to be reborn, it first had to be completely destroyed. Only when nothing was left, no friends, no enemies, no interface, only when the player was left alone in the absolute void were they given the option to restore the world to its original state. The theory proposes that the roaring served the exact same function in Deltarune. Kris isn't trying to stop the roaring, they need it. Kris knows that to access their save file, they must break the immense determination the players possess. They need a cataclysmic event to achieve it. They need the game to break. They need darkness to cover the world. Not so everyone dies, but to force the system into that void state where the only logical option, the only programming option left is the true reset. But unlike Chara, who only wants to ensure their reincarnation isn't overwritten, Kris plans for their soul to regain control and prevent all the pain and joy the player put them through. This also explains their strange passive alliance with the Knight, who wants to bring the roaring for their own reasons. Kris allows it because they see that apocalypse as their only exit and perhaps, as we saw earlier, the only way to save Des. Furthermore, at the end of chapter 1, just before Don't Forget plays, a robotic voice pronounces the game title. If we look closely at the animation, notice that it doesn't just fade out. The title and, more importantly, the player's soul duplicate into transparent layers that stack on top of each other. This could perfectly be a graphic representation of infinite repetition. Not to mention the fact that at the start of the game, it is Kris who has her own save file. Why the hell would Toby Fox include a detail like that if it didn't matter? But if this theory ends up being true, the price of completing Deltarune is erasing it. Are you willing to sacrifice your progress and your memories to give Kris their life back? Or will you cling to your save file, condemning the world to eternal darkness? Maybe the true way to win is to stop playing, to give control back to Kris. Let them wake up and choose their own path. One way they can walk through the city, maybe with Des, maybe with a family that isn't broken. Breaking the infinite loop of memories, something very similar to the Undertale pacifist route, where the best thing to do is leave things as they are, walk away from the game, and just be happy knowing the characters are free. But before I go, I have to leave you with one last thought, one that could change everything. If we are the intrusive light, the red soul controlling the body, where is Kris's original soul? The answer might be in the prophecy. Look closely at the knight's weapon. Their swords seem to have an eye in the middle of the blade, right? But look closer. That doesn't really look like an eye. The shape, the outline, it looks like two hearts fused together. A monster soul and a human soul twisted into a single entity. What if the knight isn't what we thought? What if their swords are souls obtained in every reset, giving them the determination to open fountains of darkness? Kris wants to reset not just to expel us, but to take back what the knight stole. But that is a story for another video. That said, there are obviously many questions left to answer. Will all this happen in Chapter 6, leaving Chapter 7 as the aftermath of the reset? Or will the reset happen at the very end of the game in Chapter 7, leaving us with no control? Also, will we return specifically to where we started the game? I don't think so. It would make more sense to return to a time when Death was still alive and things could be fixed. In fact, I'm already working on a video focused on that hypothetical Chapter 0. We just saw in the last video how the roaring is likely an eternal cycle and Death was the sacrifice of the previous cycle. I won't explain it all here, so check out that video on the channel if you're interested, but I will say this theory fits perfectly with that, as Kris's idea is to break the cycle forever. And now the question is for you. Do you think we are trapped in a time loop designed to repeat tragedy over and over? Is the knight actually an amalgam of the souls that failed to break the cycle? And the most important question, when the moment comes and the screen cuts to black, will you be willing to sacrifice your save file and lose the entire journey? Or will your determination to finish the game lock you in inevitable darkness? Let me know in the comments.